I'm doing a quick sheetrock repair for some family members. This is kind of a long story, so I'm not going to go into it, but this damage was done by a car door that was opened while the car was backing up. And by the time it was stopped a few feet later, this is what you ended up with. So I'll show you how we're going to deal with this and get it back to looking like nothing happened here. The door pretty much hit directly between two studs that are on 16-inch centers. So my approach is going to be to cut this entire section out and replace it with a couple of full 16-inch wide pieces of sheetrock. What I'm looking for here is the center of the stud. If I can hit that line with my cut, then that allows me to use the stud for backing for the new piece of sheetrock going in, as well as the old piece of sheetrock it is up against that now needs a few screws added to it. The tool I'm using here to make the cuts is called a multi-tool, or at least that's the term I most often hear associated with it. It took me a long time to ever even buy one because I didn't think these things would be particularly helpful. I picked up one very inexpensive one at Harbor Freight for a specific purpose, but found it to be pretty amazing once I got used to working with it. I found that I was grabbing it all the time on jobs to use for cutting, notching, trimming, etc. because it was so versatile. A few months ago I also picked up a little nicer model that is battery operated and uses the same batteries as my screw guns. So that's just an added benefit. It now goes with me all the time and is without a doubt my favorite tool to have around. My purpose for showing you this is to take some of the mystery out of fixing things like this because there's really not that much to it. I cut out the damaged area and now I'm going to screw in new pieces of sheetrock. It only takes a light cut in the sheetrock to allow you to break it like this. If you lightly score the backside on the cut line, the new piece can be snapped away very easily. The width of my sheetrock piece is 48 inches tall, so I'm going to use 5 to 6 screws on each side of my cut to attach it to the studs. I'm also running in a few screws into the old sheetrock edge next to the new piece. Now this next step to me is the most important one to make sure you have a repair that will disappear once it's complete. I'm cutting about 1/8 of an inch line into the texture of the old sheetrock, about 1 inch away from the repair joint. I use the multi-tool to do this. The purpose of this is to give me a space where I can put the new drywall tape over the joint and still be able to float that surface out with mud and not build past the surface of the old texture. In other words, I would like this area to be as level as possible so that the repair won't show once it's textured. Doing this takes a little more time, but it makes it so much easier to get your finish to the level that the repair won't show, that it makes sense to do it. Adding drywall tape over the new joint is the next step in the process. The tape is just a rigid paper that has a centerline crease down it to allow you to bend it and put it into corners, but all it's really doing is isolating the joint in order to keep the crack from showing through. It's important to get the tape embedded in a coat of mud, so you need to work quickly before the mud begins to dry and doesn't grab the back of the drywall tape. If that happens, you'll have bubbles or hollow spots that form behind the tape, and you'll need to cut those out and install a little piece of drywall tape over those spots. The biggest mistake people make in trying these kinds of repairs themselves is that they get in a hurry. Not that you can't work fast in applying the mud, but in the sense that they want to complete the whole process at one time, and that's where they mess up. While there are ways to use faster drying products to speed things up, if you're just doing these repairs at home, then do it in stages and let the mud dry between those stages. Those areas on the left side where the car door didn't break through the sheetrock, dents and dings were the primary damage. So there's no need to cut the sheetrock out in those areas, and I just floated over them with mud to bring them back to the surface level of the texture around them. Now I am adding more mud on the main repair area than I typically would before I stop and let it dry overnight. The reason is, in this case, the sheetrock in the garage is 5/8 inches thick, and I only have 1/2 inch sheetrock available. I could have put shims on the studs to bring the sheetrock closer to flush, but I would almost prefer to build it out with several layers of mud. It's the next day and I'm back to add another layer of mud. This gets much easier now that I have a very dry surface to add the next coat to. This next coat will set up very quickly, and if I time everything right, I can get almost a perfectly smooth surface with this pass. If I wanted to take the quality of this repair up another notch, I could float out beyond the repair about 6 inches and pretty much eliminate any sign that a repair ever took place. However, there's not really a point in doing that. If you look closely at where the arrows are, you can see the shadow off the studs that were not even involved in the repair. So it doesn't make much sense to make my patch look better than the original work. After lightly sanding out any lines in my surface, the last step is to spray texture over the areas that have been repaired. This texture is an orange peel or light knockdown combination texture, and what that means is I'll spray small splatters of texture on the walls, then take a blade and with very light pressure drag it across the top of the texture once it has begun to set up. That will result in a very close match to the original work. I am spraying my texture with an air compressor and hopper that's designed for spraying larger areas. That's the favorite part of the job for me because it's simple to do and you complete it very quickly. The same thing can be accomplished with cans of texture that you buy at hardware stores, and with a little practice, you can get a good result. The main thing I don't like about the cans of texture is the price. These cans run in the range of about $18 to $19 per can, and I would probably be pushing it to spray what I sprayed with my hopper with just one can of texture. In addition, the texture I added to my hopper was just thinned down mud that I've been using to float the walls. So my texture cost me pennies compared to 18, maybe 36 bucks to do what I did with the hopper. Well, that's about it. I hope if anything I communicated to you that these kinds of repairs are not overwhelming challenges. With just a little time and patience, lots of folks can do their own sheetrock repairs. Check out other videos on my channel and hopefully you'll find some things that are of interest to you. I like to say there's always something going on around Dob's Workshop, so check back every week or so and see what you may have missed.